access code or meeting number. Enter your attendee ID number, followed by pound. If you do not know your attendee number, press pound to continue. Your line has been muted. Press *6 to unmute your own line.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
Virginia, why don't we start with you with the latest on the president and COVID, please.
Okay. All right. So the president, as we know, is back in the White House, and this morning he is continuing to downplay the threat of the virus that he currently is contagious with. Comparing in a tweet this morning COVID-19 to the flu, many people every year, sometimes over 100,000, and despite the vaccine, die from the flu. And then going on to falsely claim coronavirus is, in most populations, far less lethal. This coming after this incredibly reckless departure from Walter Reed last night, telling his followers that the virus that hospitalized him for 72 hours was nothing to fear, before walking up the steps and taking his mask off for a photo op, noting that, he has cared that most, if not all, of the other 200,000 people who have lost their lives to this do not have. He then taped a campaign-style video after the reporters left the South Lawn, and he got COVID-19 because he had to as a leader. Then this incredible remark about maybe I'm immune, and this all coming out of after the doctor saying that it was not clear that he was out of the woods yet, and advisors had been urging him to not check out, and in fact saying that until next Monday he will not be completely out of the woods. There are, obviously, we saw him last night at the top of the stairs. He did appear to be breathing heavily. This is obviously a respiratory disease. And the doctor's claiming that Trump's clinical status supported the discharge, but they acknowledged the concern about the reversal. Fauci on Cuomo last night saying the issue is it's still early enough in the disease that there's no sense of whether it could return. And then we obviously have a huge amount of questions still outstanding. We don't know about these lung scans. We don't know still today about the last time he had a negative test. We do know that these temporary offices have been set up adjacent to the White House medical suite, and we're spending a lot of time trying to figure out what's going on inside. A member of the White House staff was spotted cleaning the briefing room in a hazmat suit. And a White House source telling Axios it's insane that he would return to the White House and jeopardize his staff's health when we're still learning of new cases among the senior staff. This place is a cesspool. The other thing, just to note, Rudy Giuliani, who's waiting for a test, was doing a lot of coughing last night in his interview on Fox. And then there's obviously these Kelly Conway's daughter's TikTok flying around about that he's sicker than that the president is very sick. So we're working on trying to figure out what's exactly going on. David will talk about the campaign side of it all, just backing up to the agencies and Trump. So on that event in the White House for Amy Coney Barrett, the D.C. mayor's office says that it has made multiple attempts to contact the White House on contact tracing, no response. 13 members from a Minneapolis steakhouse are quarantining after catering a fundraiser Trump attended last week. And then we have these CDC, Nick Valencia now reporting that the White House has declined offers from the CDC to help investigate the outbreak and run contact tracing. We also have that the New York Times reporting that the White House has been balking at the stricter protocols on the vaccine from the FDA, with Meadows, saying not allowing them to go forward. And we're going to release today Sarah Murray's terrific reporting about how the president is actively engaging in trying to get this vaccine through and calling the heads of these pharmaceutical companies. And then lastly on COVID, this whole stimulus package, Pelosi and the leaders, Mnuchin asked to come to her office. Pelosi said no. And they had talks yesterday. They don't have anything, and they're supposed to meet again this morning, but it does not appear that they're getting any closer to a deal. And I think that's what I've got on COVID.
Okay, before we go to the bigger country at large, why don't we just open it up now and talk about the stuff that Virginia has discussed. Any other questions, thoughts on Trump and COVID and or even stretching as far as the stimulus plan? Anything at all from anybody on the president and COVID? Okay.
Hey, Michael, it's David. Just one thing I would point out is he's gotten all this world-class medical care. And, I think this ties to the fact that he paid $750 in taxes. But all the expense that was invested to get him healthier is something he declined to pay his fair share for.
Well, that certainly is true. Did not extend his own support for what allowed that to be created. You're right. Anybody else on Trump? Okay, well, as I said yesterday, while obviously our intense focus is on one patient who has COVID, and even though that patient has said, don't let it dominate you, don't let it dominate your life, life is being dominated by the virus across the country in homes. I would imagine there are very few homes across the country where COVID is not an issue in some way, shape, or form. So keep that in mind. Make sure that we're covering the country as a whole and all of the stories. And when you see pieces like what Kyung La did with the family who's just struggling to survive through this, that's the real story of this virus in so many ways. So let's go to Laura.
Hey, Michael, it's Cynthia. Briefly, and sorry to interrupt. I just had a question for you or Virginia. Have we done a map or graphic or something that shows because the way it sounds, could Trump himself be the super spreader? I mean, is there a map that shows on X day he was here and this number of people have now, Bedminster gotten sick, and from that place he went to St. Louis, and now, 12 caterers are sick, and from that place he went, do we have a little map and kind of showing his travel? Has that been done?
We've done the timeline, Cynthia, with the locations and things. By the way, the workers that she mentioned in Minnesota, I don't believe are sick. I think they're just quarantining, if I understand that right. But yes, I mean, look, part of the reason that there's such a big question and how outrageous it is, for example, that the White House has turned down the CDC's offer to help with contact tracing is that it's impossible to pin down right now who was spreading the virus. It's almost certainly true that Trump spread it to some people, probably, but we don't know that for sure, as likely as people spreading it to him. And as Ben has pointed out on multiple occasions, just because Hope Hicks was the first name that came out as somebody who tested positive doesn't mean that she was a source. She could just as easily have gotten it from Trump or someone else through the course of this thing. But yes, the timelines have been done. The tracing, as best we can do based on what we know, has been done and has been discussed. But without a real scientific contact tracing, we may never know exactly who the start of this was.
Yeah.
Hey, Michael, it's Marcus. Can we, I mean, it seems like a very, maybe, mundane question, but can we ask why does the White House even have a choice? I mean, could you imagine this was another president and the White House turned down the CDC, of all people's request or, offer of help? I mean, Congress would just eviscerate another president. I mean, can we ask that at least of guests and stuff? Why does the White House have a choice? I mean, it's extraordinary irresponsibility from the White House. We don't have to just accept that. Like, oh, okay, sure.
Totally agree, and it's a question we're raising, obviously, now that we know this. Yes, absolutely. No, everybody should be asked that. And as Marcus, you kind of know the answer. I mean, it breaks down on partisan lines. And one side says, yes, this is outrageous, and the other side says either, no, that's not necessary, or they say they didn't read that or they didn't hear the question or whatever it is, to try to avoid talking about it. So it's a purely partisan answer for the most part. And yes, of course, it should be being done. First of all, because we still don't know if more people are going to get sick from the White House. And it's also likely that there are people that have COVID who have been in contact with the White House that we don't know about. So, yes, you're absolutely right. But the answers are kind of pat answers based on which party you belong to. All right, so let's go to the country as a whole and get the bigger COVID picture, which is not so great, as we know. Laura.
Yes, so following up on all of this, the bigger picture is not good. The numbers are the reality, and the case count in the United States is up 7% over last week. Only 4 states in the country are green on our map, meaning only 4 states are showing downward trends. There are 21 states going upwards, 24 states steady, and the 5 northeastern states that we mentioned yesterday, Vermont, New York, Connecticut, Rhode Island, and New Hampshire are still at 50% plus increases. The U.S. death total went over 210,000 with 460 deaths added on Monday. And there were 40,000 cases, nearly 40,000 cases added as well. And Mondays tend to have lower numbers, but those are not lower numbers. As Virginia has already mentioned, the FDA and the CDC contact tracing, I'll pick up with the CDC released guidance yesterday about the spread and the airborne transmission of coronavirus, and this is the 3rd change to those guidelines in a month. And in terms of the virus spread, the CDC also released a case report on a 13-year-old girl who had a stuffy nose and was negative for coronavirus. But it appears that she is the source for a 12-person outbreak that impacted family members between the ages of 9 and 72. And we're also monitoring hospitalizations. Yesterday, there were over 30,000, with places like Montana and Oklahoma reporting record numbers. We have also researchers at Northwestern University found that anytime during the course of COVID-19 illness, 82.3% of patients had experienced some sort of neurological symptoms, such as headaches or altered brain function. So we have, picking up all of these medical threads, Sanjay Gupta and Jacqueline Howard available throughout the day. And masks, again, are entering part of the fight, as witnessed last night at the White House. But we also have in the states, Michigan's Department of Health and Human Services announced that they were taking public health orders forward and putting a mask mandate and limiting gatherings and requiring social distances after the state Supreme Court reversed an executive order from Governor Whitmer. Pennsylvania is adding testing clinics into a county that has seen its numbers go up north of 10%, and calling it an escalation in the numbers in Kentucky. You will also have Governor Beshear looking for mask enforcement throughout the state of Kentucky. Plus, there was a 65-year-old man who has been charged in the death of pushing an 80-year-old man at a bar outside of Buffalo when the 80-year-old confronted the 65-year-old over wearing a mask. The 80-year-old passed away over the weekend. And in New York City, 9 hotspot zip codes have 300 schools closed starting today. And the mayor wants to move towards shutting down non-essential business. And there is a fight with the governor, who has said that not closing small businesses because zip codes are not targeted enough. We have all of these stories that can be covered by Alex Field in New York, Adrian Brodas in Chicago, and On Education, Diana Goldriga in New York, Plus, Michael already mentioned Kyung Won's terrific piece that's available throughout the day today. We also have Andy Scholes on picking up the restrictions and monitoring practices that the NFL is putting in place on teams in light of their latest outbreak. We have Erica Hill today filing the 3, 5, 7, and 9 Corona wrap, and I will pause there on domestic.
Okay, thank you, Laura. International on COVID.
Hey, Michael. So in Europe, new restrictions in Paris coming into effect today, Italy expanding mask wearing in public places, and Germany makes masks mandatory in Parliament. So Melissa Bell has all the latest on the Europe concerns and spikes. Meanwhile, in the UK, Boris Johnson, in a speech to his party today, insisted COVID did not destroy his mojo, despite reports suggesting he is less energized on heels of battling the virus. He talked again about his weight loss, and he noted that he got severe symptoms from COVID because he was too heavy. So Scott McLean has all of those lines this morning. He's also weaving in Scotland announcing new COVID measures today. China is in talks with the WHO to have its 4 locally produced COVID vaccines assessed as a step towards making them available globally for emergency use. And Selena Wang has that report. And then Veritas just on the latest in India, where those numbers seem to be going in a positive direction. So that's where we are in COVID today.
Okay, thank you, Penny. Business on COVID.
Michael, good morning. Stocks positive this morning, mostly on receding fears of a contested election as those polls widen for Biden. David's going to have more on that. But analysts on Wall Street seem to be more comfortable with the notion of a Biden win, perhaps even a blue wave in November. And, of course, the president taking to Twitter today, repeating his favorite warning that Democrats just want to shut our economy and jobs down. Well, Goldman Sachs disagreeing with that in a note, saying that a Democratic sweep could actually boost the economy. Goldman pointing to the probability of fiscal stimulus of at least $2 trillion. JP Morgan also telling its clients that a potential Biden victory should not be seen as a negative for the markets. Christine Romans and Christina Alessi are up and available on those threads. And at the end of the day, what really matters, obviously, stimulus. A growing number of Wall Street analysts do not expect stimulus until next year. Meanwhile, the U.S. is still in a jobs crisis, down 10.7 million jobs since February. And I would like to second that on Kyung's piece. Look no further than that to look at what it's like to be hungry in a time of COVID. And of course, the latest round of stimulus has been elusive, as Virginia mentioned. Lastly, just want to mention Oliver Darcy tracking reporters covering the White House. They are furious at administration officials who they believe have been grossly mishandling the coronavirus in the West Wing. Oliver interviewed about a dozen, and many told him they simply do not feel safe at the White House and are actively avoiding the grounds unless absolutely necessary. He is up on that today and has a piece for Reliable, and that's where we start.
Okay, thank you, Richard. Let's open it up on COVID. Anything that we've talked about regarding COVID?
Just one thing for business. Michael, I'm just, have Facebook or Twitter gone after the new Trump misinformation tweets and posted yet?
Sony has been making calls on that. Right now, they haven't flagged it yet, but we are making calls to both of them because obviously he's overinflating the number of deaths from the common flu. So we are misinformation.
It's just like
100%. Yep.
And the other question I had was: has anybody heard anything about Chris Christie?
We're working on that. We're trying to figure that out.
And he did an interview with the Star Ledger yesterday. So he's talking.
Jim, it's Ben on the point that you were making, just drawing everyone's attention to the guidance I just quickly put together and sent out about how many people have died from the flu here in the U.S. It is absolutely fair to say that more people have already died from coronavirus so far than died during the past 5 seasons combined here in the United States. So take a look at those numbers. Let me know if you have any questions. And then in addition to everything that Virginia and Laura touched on, just one other thing to add, which we sent out an alert on this morning, is a really interesting new Axios Ipsos poll that shows 21% of people say they are more likely to wear a mask following Trump's diagnosis. 21% of people are more likely to maintain more social distance. And 23% now say they are less likely, no surprise, to trust Trump to provide accurate information about COVID-19.
Yep, thanks, Ben. Who else?
I'm looking at Trump's
Twitter chain, and there is a tweet that's been deleted for violating the rules. I don't know what it was, but they've taken down something. And to the question about Chris Christie, I mean, I know this isn't surprising, but literally since Hope Hicks was diagnosed, I mean, I don't think Trump has tweeted a single word about any of the other people, saying he hoped that they were doing fine, and, just listen, just a complete lack of acknowledgement that all of these advisors of his, people who are supporting him are sick, and it's just despicable. I mean, I know it's not surprising, but it's like literally I have not found, and maybe I'm wrong, like a single word of his wishing them well. It's all about him.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Janita. He has not done that. The only other person with COVID that he's mentioned is the First Lady in his videos, at least one of his videos, saying she's doing well. And I don't know, I think that might have been the Saturday video, so that's a while ago now. But he has not mentioned any of them, either to wish them well or updates on them or anything like that. So, yes, absolutely. And,
I believe he's talked to Tillis.
Yeah, well, Tom Tillis just came out and said that he talked to the president last night, but the president hasn't sent out anything he's talked to Giuliani too, as we know, but he hasn't made any public statements like wishing them well or that kind of thing, which a normal person would do. But the other thing I wanted to bring up is because Jim asked about Christie, which we've been trying to get info on. Giuliani was brought up coughing all the way through his Fox interview last night and awaiting another test. We do need updates on all of these other people and how they're doing. Hope Hicks, we've heard nary a word about in terms of what her condition is or how she's doing. Not, as far as I know, not one word. Kayleigh McEnany called into Hannity, but for less than 2 minutes last night, very short. How's she doing? How's her staff doing? The two that are positive. We've checked in with the journalists that are sick that we know of, but we should have an update on them as well. We really need like a roundup of the entire White House circle of positives who are dealing with COVID and how they're doing. And Giuliani may shortly be added to that list of somebody who has it, since he was coughing quite a bit last night. I don't know. We'll see.
Hey, Michael.
Follow up on that. He just said he tested negative again.
Giuliani tested negative again?
Correct.
Yeah. So he just has a cough. All right. Lucky guy. Thank you. But I do think we need a roundup of everything we can find out about Hope, Kayleigh, Chris Christie, the senators, et cetera, on how they're all doing, the circle. And then, again, keep digging on how many other people that maybe we haven't heard about yet that have been in contact with those people may or may not have COVID.
Hey, Michael?
Yeah.
Just to add to that, I there is like an explicit number of people that work at the White House campus, and I worry because we don't know their names, and there's tons of anonymous lower-level people that we don't know the full scope of what's going on, and I don't know the best way to track this down, but like I just think the information about the housekeepers that came out yesterday was so fascinating, because I think that's what a lot of people are concerned about, like all of these next level down anonymous people who are just anonymously suffering. And if there's a way to focus someone on collecting all of that like anonymous information of people we've never heard of but could be suffering by themselves, I think it would be compelling to hear their stories.
Yeah, no, I totally agree, Rebecca. And the White House team is working on that. That's why I've said a few times, I'm sure there's a bunch of cases that we don't know about, just because either the people are, off on their own somewhere and haven't really reported in, or they're hiding it, or they're just so unknown as they're lower level people that nobody has paid attention to. But yes, we're definitely working on that and trying to figure that out. I'm sure there are more cases. It's almost impossible to think that there aren't more cases among people on lower levels, since there was such a heavy, obviously, viral load within this group, because so many prominent people were infected. So, yes, that's absolutely true. What else? Okay, please make sure please mute your phone if you're traveling somewhere on yourself. And please make sure we stay on the bigger picture story as well as the focus on patient number one. It's really important to continue to tell the larger story and continue to amplify stories like the one Kyung told about that family, which we've done such a tremendous job with. And we have more of those kinds of pieces coming. But and the school story continues to be really important, as we know what's going on in New York City and in other places around the country as well. All right, let's move to other domestic stories. Laura.
Sure. Just to highlight two things. An officer has been arrested in Wolf City, Texas, after the shooting death of an unarmed man who was trying to break up a dispute. We're pursuing the surveillance cameras and body cam footage in that, and we have Ed Lavandera available on this. And Hurricane Delta is projected to hit the Louisiana coast on Friday into Saturday as a Category 2 storm. And New Orleans right now is on the wrong side of the storm. We haven't gotten up to the Delta in the Greek alphabet since 2005, the same year of Katrina and Rita. So we have Chad Myers and Tom Slater available in the Weather Center on that. And that's all stuff for today.
Okay. Other international stories.
Hey, Michael, we're pretty much all Trump and COVID, but two things we're making room for. The U.S. Navy gave CNN exclusive access inside one of their surveillance flights in the Black Sea area where military jets from Russia and the U.S. have been testing each other, and the number of risky interceptions has been on the rise. So Fred Pleiken will have that report, which will air in Becky's hours. Also, Becky's speaking to the Armenian president today in her hours, a great get from her. We'll probably get the other side tomorrow, but he has asked leaders, the Armenian president, to put pressure on Turkey to stop interfering in the region, suggesting their support of Azerbaijan is escalating the conflict. Meanwhile, the fighting is continuing, and Amnesty International issued a report condemning what they say is the use of cluster bombs, which are banned under international humanitarian law. So NPW will be looking into that. And then also just to mention, we've got our eye on Hurricane Delta too. We're organizing coverage around that, possibly from tomorrow as it makes its way over to Cancun and then the Gulf Coast, as Laura mentioned at the end of the week. So I'll stop there.
Okay, thank you, Penny. Other business stories.
Yeah, just quickly, weeks before the U.S. election, troubling new report this morning saying that ransomware attacks are on the rise. The U.S. seeing a doubling of these attacks over the last 3 months. Obviously, this is on the heels of an, alarming recent disclosures from hospital systems, cities, country governments, and other targets that have been hit. And U.S. Treasury also last week warning about ransomware attacks from criminals. Brian Fung is up on that, and that's where we start.
Okay, thanks, Richard. Virginia, other things from Washington?
So obviously we have an election coming, and this whole voting registration thing is there's a lot of threads on. Probably the most important is the South Carolina one, where in terms of voting, you have to. I'm actually not exactly sure, but there was a ruling in South Carolina that was good for the Republicans. And this comes on top of Marshall reporting that Democrats are doing some hardcore victories over election matters that have wiped out the more challenging terrain in the federal appeals courts across the country. So Pam will have the wrap on that. And we also released this morning the latest early voting returns, which are over 3 million now. Just a fraction, but still we'll keep getting those numbers. The other thing I want to point out is that Homeland Threat Assessment that we were all waiting for that got delayed. It highlights the threats posted by China and Russia, but identifies white supremacists as posing the most persistent and lethal threat of all domestic violent extremist groups. So I know the debate seems like a long time ago, but on that line, that's an important development from this administration. And I think that's it.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Oh, wait. One more thing. I just want to note this, the Hunter Biden allegations that this White House has, and Ukraine that this White House has been all over. Now the U.S. State Department has revoked the visa of this former Ukrainian diplomat who worked with the Republicans to spread this conspiracy theory about the Biden family. So again, this administration having to admit that wasn't what it appeared to be.
The Ukrainian who is alleged to be a Russian agent?
Correct.
They revoked his visa to the United States?
Yeah.
That's a pretty good story. As Ron Johnson, who also was part of the COVID story, has said that, all this stuff, it's all based on that guy's allegations.
Correct. And yeah.
Well, I'm sure Digital is writing up a story to update on that story and to further call into question the credentials of this person who's now been banned by the United States, despite the fact that Ron Johnson and others used him as it's not just a source, but mostly the entire campaign against Hunter Biden and Joe Biden, as presented by Ron Johnson and others, was based on this guy's information. So,
yeah, Michael, we'll get on that. We'll use that framing. That's good.
Good, thank you. All right.
Which the president was willing to get impeached over. Just a reminder.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, that's a good little note, actually. Remember, that was actually in 2020. The Senate trial of the president was this year. Hard to remember that, but it was. All right. Well, so now that David's voice has been heard, let's turn to politics.
Sorry to jump the gun. Good morning, Michael. Obviously, the campaign continues. You see the president clearly wants that, putting out his videos last night, and we see that it continues with COVID, hanging over it more than ever. You saw Dan America's reporting about the debate process going forward, not just the vice presidential debate tomorrow in Salt Lake City, where plexiglass is being installed as part of the debate set and will separate Kamala Harris from Mike Pence, but also that the debate commission has been considering alternatives to the two future presidential debates, including possibly a virtual debate. You saw Joe Biden asked about this yesterday and said that he is game to follow the science and the scientists, and what they say about how it can be conducted safely is what he will follow. And the president's campaign said that the president remains committed to participating in both those debates. So just note on that, but Dan America has all of that in his story. As for today, Joe Biden is going to be giving, I guess, his version of the Gettysburg Address. He's going to Gettysburg for a 4 p.m. Eastern event where, the campaign is saying that the deep significance and symbolism of Gettysburg, both about the cost of division in the country and the strength of American ideals. It's going to be a big unity play from Biden today, and the need to come together to defeat this virus and to build the country back is going to be his plea. And as you know, from the very moment he launched this campaign, the large Biden theme of a battle for the soul of the nation will be front and center in his remarks today as well. You heard him last night clearly say that he believes Trump has responsibility in contracting the virus due to the way he's acted. So we have that Biden comment from last night as well. And then there was a ton in that NBC town hall about mask wearing after, the president's behavior last night. So Also today, the Biden campaign has now rolled out Michelle Obama's closing argument. It's a 23-minute video that will be put out on every social channel and get in front of as many eyeballs as possible. It's a lot of the themes you heard from the former First Lady in her well-received convention speech back in August. The video was recorded prior to the president's hospitalization, and the campaign, Michelle Obama has a caption to accompany all of its posting and social media channels saying she considered whether or not even to put it out, but decided it's so important about people casting their vote that she wanted to proceed with it. I do want to note, obviously, there's COVID criticism and a lot of Trump's handling of COVID criticism and a lot of Trump criticism. But I do think some of the most compelling stuff, and perhaps the actual mission, political mission of the video as well, is deep into the video, about 16 minutes in. I just don't want to get lost when people are doing this today. Her comments about race and what it is to be a black woman in this country, and the need to vote. Imagine how it feels to wake up every day and do your very best to uphold the values that this country claims to hold dear: truth, honor, decency, only to have those efforts met by scorn, not just by your fellow citizens, but by a sitting president. She goes on in a really compelling section of the video that folks should note as well as they're doing it. So that's out today. MJ Lee was up with that this morning. Jeff Zeleny also available on that, as well as the rest of the Biden team. We also have our new CNN SSRS national poll out this morning with Joe Biden with a massive lead over Donald Trump in this poll, 57% to 41%. We haven't seen this kind of a lead in our polling throughout the entire cycle. Obviously, it looks rather similar to what NBC Wall Street Journal had out a couple days ago. I think they had a 14-point spread, but it's telling a very similar story. This poll was conducted both after Donald Trump's disastrous debate performance last week and the bulk of it after his hospitalization and the weekend behavior. So all of that sort of in here, which may cause it to be sort of a high watermark kind of moment for Biden, just because of what a terrible week Trump had as this poll was in the field. But I do want to note just how significant the problem is. It's not just a big horse race lead number kind of thing. I mean, inside these numbers, demographic group after demographic group, you see Trump struggling with groups that actually helped him win the presidency 4 years ago. Remember, he won independents by 4 points. He's down by 19. He won seniors by 7 points. In this poll, he's down by 21 points. His base of whites without a college degree that he won by 37 points 4 years ago, he's winning them, but he's only winning them by 13 points in this poll right now. So the gender gap and the fact that Biden keeps it close among men and whites, where those were double-digit lead categories for Donald Trump in 2016, it shows you every which way he looks, the work that just seems extraordinary that he has to do between now and 4 weeks from today, which is Election Day. There's also stuff in there about 2/3 of the country saying the President of the United States has not done enough to denounce white supremacists. And again, you see, like we saw in our flash poll on debate night, you see overwhelmingly among debate watchers, by some 30 points or so, Biden deemed the winner of that debate. In fact, I say only, it's a majority, but usually we see much larger majorities of Trump supporters praising anything Trump related. 59% of Trump supporters say he won the debate. That's 91% of Biden voters say Biden won that debate. So that debate was clearly in these data an enormous problem for Donald Trump, and it just got compounded by his behavior as the week played out. So all those numbers are out there and they're available for folks. There are some Battleground state polling coming out today as well. Monmouth University at 11 a.m. has a poll in Pennsylvania showing Biden with a double-digit margin, I think 12 points among registered voters, and between 8 and 11-point lead for Biden in Pennsylvania, depending on the likely voter model that Monmouth uses there. So that'll be out at 11 for folks to take a look at as well. And I think that's where we start. I do just want to note Jessica Dean will be in Gettysburg, and so she's available to file on all things Biden apiece for 468, and Arlette is handling Biden piece filing for 5 and 7 from Washington. That's it. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, David. Jessica, you said, is actually in Gettysburg?
Correct.
Okay. As you were talking about Michelle Obama, the Poppy and Jim were with MJ Lee was on Public Poppy and Jim and showed a very long, I can't hear it obviously because I have the sound down, but an extended clip from the video. We should do that. We should be doing that regularly today. It's important. People want to hear from her, and it's a big deal. And as David said, there are a lot of things that she says in there that are striking. And so please make sure that gets continued play through the day. As he said, MJ can wrap that. And the other thing I just wanted to note before I open it up on politics is, first of all, David talked about the poll. There's a lot in the poll that's interesting. And some of those underlying numbers are really significant, as David said, and worth taking a look at and digging into in terms of the demographic groups and how things look for Trump heading into this election as opposed to how he did in 2016. So I do think that there's a worthwhile conversation on that as well. I do want to note as we approach the debate tomorrow night, the Katie Miller comment, Pence's spokesperson, who after the commission decided to put plexiglass between the two candidates, she took a shot at Kamala Harris, said let her put a fortress around herself, have at it, I guess, if that's what she wants. A really snarky comment. And it may be that the Harris campaign was asking for this and got their wish, and so, but still it was the commission's decision. Kamala Harris didn't make that decision. But also, Katie Miller, of course, had COVID. Pence was the leader. I don't know if he still is. I guess he still is the leader of the coronavirus task force. Katie Miller was, as his right-hand person, was a part of that process in the task force meetings every day, part of the coronavirus task force. It was investigating this, working alongside Fauci and Birx and Redfield and others. She herself got coronavirus. She missed work for almost 3 weeks, I believe, something like that, because she was out sick with coronavirus. And yet she finds it necessary to make a snarky comment about something that is actually a recommended safety protocol and is happening everywhere from your local grocery store to people's offices to our very control rooms, et cetera, with plexiglass in between to protect people from getting the virus. So I just want to highlight that because I think that the fact that she is a survivor, and by the way, she was out for 3 weeks, I believe, from work. So it wasn't like she had this, it wasn't even just a 14-day thing. She was out for longer than that.
And Michael, remember who she's married to.
Well, she's the wife of Stephen Miller, who is the president's right-hand person. And, I haven't heard the latest on Stephen Miller's COVID test, but he obviously was part of the inner circle in the last week also, and I don't know where his latest, he was negative at least once, I know. But yes, married to Stephen Miller as well. So all that worth noting.
Michael, do you mind if I just add? Okay.
What? Go ahead. Ben,
okay, it's Ben and Sam, but I'll go first real quick. Thanks. Just on the plexiglass, obviously that's something that's being put in place at the debate. I do think it's fair for us to question how effective that actually is. The place where plexiglass and things like that will be effective are in places like grocery stores, banks, our control rooms where people are close to each other. And there is the risk of droplet transmission, which would be, me talking and little droplets sort of making their way over to you. If people are already, far enough apart, putting plexiglass in between them does nothing to protect anybody from airborne transmission. It obviously just floats right above the plexiglass. So the primary mode of transmission remains droplet, but as more and more questions come up about aerosol transmission, putting a piece of plexiglass in between someone who's not within, sort of droplet reach is a false sense of security. I think we should ask questions about that of both campaigns and also the debate commission. And then, as more and more people continue to say, I was 7 feet away, not 6 feet away, the virus obviously does not stop at, you are not safe at 7 feet, but not 6 feet. And same thing, sustained contact with someone being 15 minutes, you are not safe up until, 14 minutes and 30 seconds, you're not necessarily good. So I think we should be really careful that, with that as well. These are guidelines meant to help guide behavior, but they are by no means hard and fast rules. And in many cases, including perhaps for the debate, provide a very, very false sense of security.
Okay, well, that's a really good medical note on that. My point was more about her as a survivor of COVID attacking on this, but yes. Yeah. Thank you for that, Ben. Somebody else was trying to get in. I think it was Sam.
Yeah, Michael, it was remember the reason that the Senator Harris raised this is because the vice president was in contact in the Oval Office close to the president last week. And so the guidelines would be that he should quarantine for 14 days, which he's obviously not doing. So he's already in sort of breaking the rules. And then his spokeswoman, who mocks Senator Harris, didn't only come down with COVID. She famously didn't wear a mask in advance of that and exposed journalists by not wearing a mask, including one of our own, who then had to isolate themselves, unlike what Mike Pence is doing. So of all people to mock someone for taking precautions, Katie Miller is the last person who should be doing the mocking.
Yep, I totally agree. And there was a member of the task force as well. So, okay. Anybody have anything else on politics before we move on?
Just a note on early voting that Health was talking about this morning is that by the time we reach the election, there will be people who have voted already who are dead or incapacitated from COVID-19. We will probably be seeing their families posting about this and sharing their stories.
Well, that's an interesting note. Okay. All right, let's go to digital, please.
Hey, we had almost 36 million uniques yesterday. This morning it's Collinson with 18,000 concurrent, a strong start at number one in our lead spot. Trump mounts a bizarre and misleading White House return. He says his actions show him entrenched deeper in denial over the virus than ever before and more committed to trashing scientific protocols that could slow the pandemic. That's our number one. Number two is also strong. Trump's reckless return met with a dramatically changed White House. It's Liptak, Collins, and Zeleny looking at the situation inside the White House. It's 13,000 concurrents. We've got an Errol Lewis op-ed that's very strong off of the NBC town hall last night. The headline is Biden checkmates Trump on COVID. That has 12,000 concurrents. We've got three things over 10,000 concurrents. The poll is just under it with Biden expanding his lead. And then it's the man charged in the death of the 80-year-old after the mask dispute in the upstate New York bar. The DLE rounds out the top five. The top video is the Collins on eBuff last night. Infected Trump reshoots his entrance into the White House. Let me just hit a handful of good COVID headlines. Obviously, there are so many questions and so much is unknown still. So Saliza has 14 questions about Trump, the virus, and the future of his presidency. We have an updated timeline of Trump and those in his orbit over the last week, updated graphics on who has tested positive or not. There's a good angle from Faith Karimi. These are the countries with fewer COVID-19 cases than the White House in the last 24 hours. Australia and Singapore are on that list. Neurological symptoms emerge in most hospitalized patients. That's a good health headline from Jacqueline Howard. We are also revisiting the whole long-haul, long-term effects of COVID in a story from National and Health. 10% of the world may have been infected by COVID, WHO says. Biden could make the dollar stronger because of what some are calling the sanity premium. This is a Paula Monica analysis. It's very good. So in addition to all the things that Richard mentioned that we have in business on, Goldman Sachs' statement, et cetera, we've got this new term that's making the rounds in the financial world, sanity premium. And then also in business, off of the dismal jobs report last week, two stories. A shocking number of women have dropped out of the workforce, and oil jobs are disappearing like never before. A handful of non-COVID headlines. There's a great Ron Brownstein analysis on why the Southeast is up for grabs in the 2020 election. Joan Biskupic is super sharp on Thomas and Alito attacking the same-sex marriage ruling yesterday. And climate-wise, there are more than 14 million metric tons of plastic believed to be at the bottom of the ocean. And now the term gigafire has been added to the lexicon to describe the fire in California that has grown to more than 1 million acres. That's it.
Okay, thank you, Meredith. John Antonio.
All right, so leading on our reporters a lot today out of the White House with John Harwood and Caitlin Collins, obviously fact-checking the dangerous lies that he continues to put out there, watching for reports of more staffers and aides testing positive, and we'll see if we get anything more on the testing protocols. Was he getting daily tests? The last negative, I know everybody's digging on that. We'll see what comes of that. Pairs well with the Nick Valencia reporting. We'll continue to keep that out there. The White House declining the CDC offer to help with the contact tracing. Sanjay staying on Trump and where he is in the course of the illness and treatment. The New York Times reporting on the FDA news, the White House wanting to block the vaccine guidelines, which dovetails well with the Sarah Murray reporting that Virginia mentioned. We're going to break that at 1 o'clock on Trump continuing to keep up the pressure on these vaccine manufacturers to get a vaccine out there quickly. Jim and Poppy have Jeff Mason from Reuters, Richard Haas, John King has Maggie Haberman, as well as former Bush Chief of Staff Andy Card. And then Brianna has former HHS Secretary Kathleen Sebelius, as well as a former usher and chef to take us inside the White House, what it's like to work there, the tight working conditions, to really kind of hone in on that staffer angle that's been discussed on this call. Alexandra Field stays on the broader coronavirus story, really hitting the New York City hotspots. Schools closed, businesses remain open. We have Dr. Celine Gounder booked later on this afternoon. There is a 1:30 symposium, a vaccine symposium at Johns Hopkins. Fauci is one of the participants. We'll see what news comes of that. Some of the other domestic headlines we'll get into with whips. LSU is going to stop wellness checks at its games and start selling alcohol again. More movies are delayed, including Batman. Really speaks to the death of movie theaters. And the Kyung Law Hunger piece, it is strong. It is airing more today during Dayside. We have Dr. Reiner, Dr. Ashish Jha. Plus, we are going to still talk to families of COVID victims who can really just speak to the disconnect with what the president was saying last night and this morning. MJ Lee will stay on the Michelle Obama piece of today. The video is powerful. We'll continue to play out big chunks. Ryan Nobles on the Trump campaign and no change to rallies moving forward. Dan Merica with his reporting on the VP debate changes. And we will talk to doctors about what will really make a difference. And then finally, we are going to stay on the big voting concerns. Kristen Holmes with some of the big headlines, including the South Carolina court ruling. And also John King does have the Ohio Secretary of State. He's tearing a page out of the Texas playbook, and it's going to be just one drop-off box per county for people who don't want to put their absentee ballots in the mail.
Yep, and again, it's been mentioned a couple of times, but the voting security, the contested election, all of those things are really important to stay on every single day. Only 28 days away. Washington.
Morning. So at 3 o'clock, we'll pick up Caitlin is live at the top with all the top lines from this afternoon. We've got Jeff Zellman and Gloria Board with analysis, Peter Hotez with medical. Erica has our COVID wrap in that hour, and John Brennan joins us as well. We'll ask him about national security concerns as we all look inward to Trump and COVID. Our new polling, and Dan Gallagher looks at the North Carolina Senate race as well today. And at 4 o'clock, we will take Biden's speech in Gettysburg, so we'll be ready for that. As we wait Caitlin with a donut, Senator Mazie Hirono is with us as well. Ryan on the VP debate, safety preps. Randy Kaye is looking at testing at Tampa's airport for passengers who need results to travel. And, of course, Pamela Brown has our voting security wrap piece.
And in the Situation Room, we'll be following all the latest out of the White House, obviously, with Trump's condition on the heels of last night's circus. Will any of these questions about his current condition be answered? The lung scans, when was the last negative test he took? And also those images of somewhat heavy breathing at the top of the stairs last night. We'll follow on the rest of those infected in his inner circle. What else can we find out about their conditions, as well as the lower level White House staff working around him? We'll follow on the administration's rejection of the CDC's offer to contract trace, and we'll look for that news Sarah Murray reporting on Trump actively engaging in the effort to get a vaccine through. We'll be following on all the big picture COVID threads as well. Most of the country continuing to trend in the wrong direction with these particular concerns in the Northeast. We'll have the Erica Hill wrap piece. We'll watch Biden at 4 o'clock today ahead of the debate tomorrow night, get into the new poll numbers, and use some of the Michelle Obama sound. We'll also take a look at, what tomorrow night's debate will look like with the plexiglass, and then the talk of the next 2 debates possibly being virtual. We'll have the Pam Brown voting wrap piece, and we also will be running Diane Gallagher's piece on the North Carolina Senate race.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have anything else for today? Okay. Thanks very much, everybody. Sorry for the long call, but I think it's all very important. Thank you. Have a great day.